To give us another angle to all of this. Tom, what's your analysis of what's been happening with this war over the last few days? Day 71, I think it is now.
Yes, it seems to have been a much more protracted conflict than many people were expecting at the beginning. At the start of this conflict, people were saying that Russia would absolutely walk it. Many military analysts were thinking that Ukraine would fold pretty quickly, and that has been exactly the opposite of what has happened. The tenacity of the Ukrainian people and armed forces has been nothing short of remarkable, defying all expectations. And, of course, the United Kingdom has played a very key role in supplying not only military hardware, but also the training of those troops, making the Ukrainian army a very different beast to what it was back in 2014. But there's more military cooperation going on in the world now as well. As we speak, the Japanese Prime Minister has arrived in number 10 Downing Street, and there is a flyover of RAF planes above the street to welcome him to the United Kingdom. This is all about a new defence partnership between the United Kingdom and Japan, two great island nations on opposite sides of the world, two great democracies, and indeed two of the largest economies in the world too, coming together in shared values of not only economic values but defence as well.
Is there a risk here of a sort of cyclical thing where what Russia's doing will bolster NATO and will bolster that alliance, and then in turn that will bolster Russia's response and aggressiveness towards NATO countries, and then in turn that will further bolster NATO? I mean, where do you think that relationship between NATO and Russia is going to be at the end of all of this? Hopefully the end will be soon, but where will that leave everybody?
Well, I think beyond NATO, and NATO clearly has become much more important in the last year or so, it's become much more relevant, and so many members are now finally committing to what they had committed to in writing, if not in practice, with regard to spending 2% of their GDP or more on defence. But it's also not just those NATO countries, but countries elsewhere in the world that are aligning with NATO. We're sort of seeing this great new dividing line between the free world and the unfree world. And countries like Australia, like Japan, like South Korea are very key partners of that new alliance. And I think that's what some of the meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister is about today. It also comes, of course, at the same time as the UK is negotiating accession to the CPTPP. Now, that's the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade area, or a huge expansive trade area around the Pacific, which would open our markets to some pretty exciting economic opportunities as well. This is cooperation that is showing that the Western world, the free world, really does still have it.
Tom, thank you very much. Expertly done as always. What's that acronym again?
The CPTPP.
Good stuff. Cheers.